Yujiro Hama once said, if you're a man, you'll at least dream of being the strongest man in the world once. At least once. I think that's a quote that really resonates with me and hits home, to be honest. As a kid, I've always loved anime, especially shonen, seeing characters get super strong and super powerful, having the strength to protect all that they care for and being seen as a hero. That was always something I've idolized and really fantasized about at times. But recently I've been kind of wondering, what led me to liking or being so attracted to anime? Because I could have seen any other cartoon, any other superhero story as this thing that I really love, but it was anime specifically. I'm not really sure why, but it might be because anime always portrayed these training arcs the best. And I think anime has kind of normalized these characters developing and building themselves into that. Maybe I just didn't watch enough of actual cartoons, but ever since I saw anime, ever since I laid eyes on it in grade 4 or 5, I've loved it since. And as a kid, it really influenced the way that I acted. I was pretty cringy with anime at times. I remember one time when my mom brought me to the YMCA. She was doing her Zumba class, so she brought me along to just throw me in the pool, get some exercise. It was fine, but it was a fun swim, so I sit there in the shallow end, and because you can move the water around, and when you cup it or whatever, I felt like I was making a Rasengan ball. I would hit the Rasengan in the water because I felt like I was moving around chakra and making this thing. Or other times when I'm on the toilet and it's a really bad dookie, I would just pretend like I'm going Super Saiyan to help me push it out more. So yeah, anime has definitely influenced me quite a bit. And you can only tell just in the way that I am, to be honest. I could go on for hours and hours about the characters in Dragon Ball. If you ask me about Vegeta, we're gonna be sitting here for at least an hour and a half. But I always wondered why. Why was it? What was the reason? And I think it has to do with my childhood specifically. Being that the older that I got, the more that I realized a lot of the suffering within my family was mostly because of me. I can't lie. My family originally probably wouldn't have to move to Canada. My mom wouldn't have to suffer so much carrying me on her own in the winter working a factory job if it wasn't for the fact that I was born, right? The only reason why they haven't told me this exactly, but I'm just logicking and deducing it or deducting it, that the only reason why we came to Canada was because they had to give birth to me. In China, there was still the one-child policy, so if they had me there, they would just be basically breaking the law, really. So in order to give birth to me, in order to have me, they needed to give birth to me in Canada. And it makes sense because as soon as I was given birth to, I was basically sent immediately back to China, and my sister went to Canada. So they did kind of an exchange, that sort of thing. So it's strange. It's strange. For a lot of my life, I lacked a father figure, which I don't blame my father for, because when I spent 5 years in China, they wanted to bring me to Canada because my mom had to be settled there, she had a place, and it was just gonna be a better opportunity they felt for me. So I stayed in China for 5 years with my dad, and that was really the majority of the time that I got to spend with them. I don't hate him or resent my father for anything like that. The time that I did spend with him, I could definitely tell he was a good father. He tried to teach me, right? I remember one time when my grandfather, or I blame my grandpa for doing something that I did, but my dad knew that I was the one who did it. So he basically just sat on me until I turned myself in and admitted that I was the one who did the thing. So that's just the funny moment, though. I could definitely tell that my dad wanted to teach me to be a good man. But it's also kind of because that when I was 8, my mom and dad separated. And I honestly still blame myself for the reason why they separated to this day. I'll say this much. My dad definitely was not the greatest husband, but he wasn't the worst one either. But honestly, I think it was just really the fact that I wasn't good enough. My mom was always someone who wanted the best for us, and that ended up resulting in us having absurd expectations. You know, she constantly put a lot of expectations on us. And sometimes I didn't meet that. And one moment when my dad came to visit us in Canada, she saw that I didn't do my homework for the tutoring thing that she put me up to. And my mom expected my dad to say something about that and tell me off about, oh, you need to tell your son to do better or do his homework or whatnot. But he didn't feel much of a need to scold me, so there was a disconnect in how they wanted to raise me and what they felt. I think from then a lot of tensions started arising, and once the tensions really boiled, it ended up turning into a pretty bad situation. I won't go too deep into it, it is quite personal, but they ended up separating after one night, so yeah. But I constantly think back then, if only I was a better son, if only I was a better brother, if only I was a stronger man, that I could have maybe held this family together. And you might say, don't blame yourself, because at that time you're only a kid. But someone has to be blamed for this. And I don't want it to be my father, I don't want it to be my mother, I don't want it to be my sister, I don't want it to be any of my family. I don't want them to carry that burden. I don't want them to suffer already more than they already have, right? The whole reason I'm alive is because they suffered. So why should I make them suffer anymore? As a man, I think it's imperative that you should want strength. You should seek to be strong. You should seek to be wise. You should seek to be all these things that make a man a good man. This allows you to fulfill the ultimate responsibility as a man, which is the sacrifice, to take on the burdens that nobody else really wants to. I think that's what it really means to be a man. You carry these things because it's your privilege. It's your privilege being born as a guy and being raised into a man. I've never once been told this. I've only learned this myself. Throughout my entire life, I've honestly never been really raised by anyone. The only person I could say was actually raising me was maybe my grandma, maybe some of the people that I was tutored by. But honestly, I think I raised myself for most of my life. I remember one moment when it really solidified this was when my mom came back from work and she sees me gaming. She comes to my room and just tells me this straight in my face. I give up on raising you. Raise yourself. And she handed me a book about how to raise a boy. So I think for most of my life, I've really been alone. And I try to carry that burden on my own. I thought that if I'm just strong enough, if I'm a strong enough man, I can carry that burden all on my own. But I was very wrong about that fact. As a man, you're incapable of carrying a burden on your own. No matter how light, unless you can offload that burden to others from time to time, you're gonna be incapable of holding it all on your own. I've learned this from my own life, my own experiences. I tried to carry the burdens of my own mental deterioration, but it ended up just going really poorly, to be honest. I constantly found myself contemplating suicide, but thank God that He didn't let me go through with that. God saved me from that, you know? So I'm saying, as a man, you should carry these burdens, but not alone. When you're sitting around with a group of brothers that you know have been through similar things, that you know have suffered a similar amount and have gone through these things that you have, and you're just sitting around with each other being vulnerable, there's a different sense of healing and brotherhood that comes along with that. That really just allows you to feel, what I'm doing is right. I can keep going. But carrying that burden on your own without that brotherhood is wrong. And I initially didn't have those brothers. But you know what I did have? I had God. God was all I needed. Yeah, brothers are extremely important, but so is God. God helped me through that. So sometimes it's okay to offload your burden, you know? As a man, you should be carrying your burden most of the times, and you should be sacrificing 99% of it. But that 1%, feel free to let loose a little bit, honestly. You can't speak, you can't talk. But as a man, most of the times you just have to suck it up. That's the brutal, honest truth. But I hope this video was at the very least a little insightful or a little helpful to those of you out there that are watching. I hope this helped some of you that might be in a similar situation. But that'll be about it for me in this video. Hope you all have a good day. See ya.